Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me here for this lesson on the balanced scorecard. For those of you who aren't familiar with the balanced scorecard, it is essentially a method of evaluating our employees that includes a variety of different performance measures and sometimes even has comparative information or information about reference points. So, if we're evaluating a group of employees, we might actually have multiple different employees or business units listed on the balanced scorecard so that we can contextualize the data that's included in the scorecard. So what exactly is included in the balanced scorecard? We're going to start with financial data. This can include sales data, profitability data, basically anything that is key in terms of the financial performance of the organization or the employee. All right, next we're going to look at customer data. And customer data can come from letters and feedback that are provided by customers. Customer data can come in the forms of surveys that are completed. We'll also look at process and operations data, as well as sometimes there's learning and training data included in the balanced scorecard. Now that's a little less common than some of the other points that we talked about before, but it does show up there on the balanced scorecard from time to time. And we'll also see referent data. And as I mentioned before, referent data kind of tells us how the individual being evaluated is performing compared to other individuals. So in the example that I'm going to display here in just a moment, we're going to be looking at a balanced scorecard for managers. And the balanced scorecard has performance data for each manager's business unit, and it provides performance data for 10 different units so they can be compared. So why do we want to use a balanced scorecard as opposed to a more simple form of performance evaluation? The balanced scorecard obviously is a little more complex than some of the things we're used to, but for those of you who are familiar with expectancy theory, you may recall that people's behaviors get driven by the rewards that they're going to receive. So if we know that a certain behavior is going to result in a reward, we tend to focus on making sure we execute that behavior and that we execute it well. If we know that other behaviors are not going to be tied to rewards, we tend not to focus on them quite so much. So when we have performance measures that are only capturing a few different behaviors, our employees can target the work they do and not focus on the diversity of their job on the whole. What the balanced scorecard does is by incorporating 20, 30, sometimes 40 or 50 different performance metrics, it shows our employees that their rewards are going to be tied to a multitude of different behaviors and performance measures. So they have to focus on all of these things and not just look at a few key aspects of the job. Okay, so I want to move forward by looking at an example of a balanced scorecard. And the example I'm going to show here is based upon back in the time when I was in the industry. Okay, so this is a fictional balanced scorecard, but it's modeled after one that we actually used. It's a little bit simplified. It's got about half of the performance metrics that we actually had on ours when I was in industry. And as you'll see over on the left here, these are the reference points that I was discussing earlier. So this is a balanced scorecard that was used for managers, and what we have is data on all of the managers' different locations, their business units. And you can see we have 10 different locations listed here and the same 10 locations listed down here. We also have aggregate performance for the district. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to look at one location's performance, compare it to the average or the aggregate performance for the district, and also it allows you to look and see where it ranks compared to its peers. Okay, up on the top, you see we've got a section devoted to sales, a section devoted to operations, a section devoted to inventory, which would again be tied to operations. We have our customer section down here, and then a couple more sales sections over here. Ultimately, there's roughly about 30 different metrics displayed on this particular example of the balanced scorecard. And what we're going to do here as we move forward is we're just going to kind of walk through how to read the balanced scorecard. So I've highlighted location 10, and we're just going to go through location 10 metric by metric to understand what all these different things mean. So we're going to start by zooming in on the sales section, which would reflect some of the financial points that we spoke about earlier. And as we look here, what we'll see is here's location 10 highlighted. The first metric that we have is actual sales, and then in parentheses it says times 1,000. Okay, the sales for this unit aren't actually 16,000, they are $16 million. That's what the times 1,000 means. Generally speaking, we wouldn't typically evaluate a unit on its actual sales because there are a lot of different factors that can go in there. We'll have that in there so that we can contextualize it, but what we'll take a look at over here is the sales plan percentage. And what that means is it's telling you basically how did the location do compared to its sales target. Okay, so in this case, location 10 you can see is positive 2.4%. What that means is that it's exceeding its sales target by 2.4%. Generally speaking, that seems pretty good. As we go down and look location by location, we've got negative, negative. This one is beating location 10. We've got negative, 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 negative. These two are positive, but not quite as good as location 10. So location 10 essentially ranks second out of 10 in sales plan percentage. And as you can see, it's beating the district average by quite a bit. Next, we have our sales comp percentage. And what this is telling us is what the different location sales look like compared to the previous year. This is different from our sales plan because this is compared to the previous year, whereas the sales plan is looking at a goal. Sometimes goals differ from comps for a variety of reasons. There can be environmental factors that impact what we're going to project sales to be, and so on. But as we look here, we see location 10 is at 5.8% comps, which is pretty good. If we're comparing that to the district, it's almost 3 times what the rest of the district is comping at. And again, it's second to just location 3. Next, we have transaction comp percent, which basically is telling you how many transactions each unit is capturing compared to the previous year. So how many invoices are they running, things like that. Okay, and here location 10 is at positive 4.5%, and that's more than twice what the district average is. And as we look down the list here, it looks like that's actually the highest in the district, so it ranks number 1. Okay. Next, we're going to look at average sale. And what average sale tells us is for each transaction that is run, what is the average dollar amount per sale. And as we look at location 10 here, we see they're at $57.69. That's actually about $2 less than the district average. So this is the first place where we're seeing location 10 not performing as well as the district average. And as we look through here, we can see there's 4 different locations performing worse than location 10. So they're kind of right in the middle of the pack on this. So this is an area of opportunity for them. And it's one that may have gone unrecognized if we were just simply evaluating them based upon their sales. Okay. Next, we have the average sale comp percentage, which is telling us how much did this number change from the previous year. But as we look at this, what we see is that location 10 actually comped 1.3%, which is considerably more than the district average. And there's, again, location 3 is the only location beating them on that. So even though their average sales are low, understanding the comps helps us to contextualize this and see that their sales numbers here aren't all that bad. And then we're looking at .com sales or internet sales. And these are, again, comp percentage, so showing a comparison to the previous year. And all of the different locations are comping pretty high. But what we do see is that, again, location 10 is performing a little worse than the district average, and it appears to be somewhere in the middle of the pack. So that's another area for opportunity that we may not have noticed had we just been focused on sales plan and comp percentage. All right, next we're going to move forward into some more financial metrics here. And essentially what we have here is we have some focus class comps. And what these are telling us are that there are 6 different classes that the company wanted all of their locations to be focused on improving sales in. So like 6 different categories that they wanted a focus on. And as we look down here, what we can see is that essentially, with the exception of class 4 and class 6, location 10 is beating the district average, and in many cases beating it by quite a bit. Location 4 is actually performing pretty poorly as they have a negative comp, but you can see that they're not the only location with a negative comp. There are 3 other locations with a negative comp. So this seems to be a little bit of a problem, and having that reference data helps us to contextualize that. And then when we look at class 6, we can see that they're pretty much on the lower middle of the pack when we compare them to everyone else, and just barely underneath the district average. Now we can come over here to commercial sales, and we see compared to their plan on commercial sales, location 10 is at 2%, so they're 2% above their plan. And as we scroll down here, there's only one, again, location 3, and then we have location 6 are the only locations performing better than location 10 here on sales plan. So they're in the 3rd position and well ahead of the district average. But their comps are at 5.1%, meaning that their commercial sales have increased 5.1% compared to the previous year, and that actually leads the district and is considerably higher than the district average. All right, next we're going to move forward into looking at some of the operational information that's included on this balanced scorecard. And the first thing here we have is controllable operational profit. Okay, now this actually is a financial metric, but in this particular case, we had it bundled in with our operations. We can see location 10 is at positive 6.6% compared to plan, which is the highest in the district and ahead of the district average by far. Core sales adjusted hours, this is an area just basically looking to see if they were staffing their location the way they should be staffing it, and they were ahead in this. Only one location 2 was higher than location 10, and we see location 10 is beating the district average by far. Now these 2 red areas here, these are areas where we're actually looking for lower numbers. Okay, and we see total sales adjusted hours, meaning basically hours against budget. We could see that location 10 is at negative 2.5%, which is lower than any other location and considerably lower than the district average. We see that their markdowns compared to their plan are also negative, and that's lower than the district average. They are in a tie for 2nd place there. And then they have an APM walk score, which is basically an operations score based upon an auditor. And they're pretty much in the middle of the pack here and very close to the district average. As we look at inventory, we can see where their turns are. Their turns are very high at 41. That leads the district and is twice what the district average is. Their shrink is very low at 0.3%. Okay, that's about half of what the district average is, and they beat their plan by a considerable amount. Okay, inventory, they're a little bit over inventory here. You can see at 1.1%. However, that's considerably lower than location 1. It's considerably lower than location 5. It's about half of where locations 7 and 8 are at, and it is lower than the district average. So even though they're above their plan here, which is not great performance, when we look at those reference points and compare them, that's not bad. And then we look at their total out of stocks. They had 141. We're looking for a low number here, and that's a little bit lower than the district average. Okay. Finally, we're going to move forward into some of the customer metrics here and see how to read those. And what we see when we look at the customer metrics is that we see first we have LTR, which is a likelihood to recommend. We have their average score, and then the comp showing what it changed. Okay, location 10 is pretty low on LTR. They're 0.2 below the district average almost, and their comps are pretty low as well. While the district comped 2%, location 10 only comped 0.23%. All right, service score is pretty close to the district average, as is their service score comp. Their speed score rated by customers is a little bit lower than the district average, which may be why their likelihood to recommend is low. And we see that their comps here are similar to their likelihood to recommend comp and much lower than the district average. All right, we see how much praise they get compared to complaints from customers, and the ratio there is 6. The high ratio is good. That's about double the ratio for the rest of the district, and it appears to be a tie for 2nd in the district. So ultimately, what we see here by looking at the balanced scorecard is there's definitely a few areas in terms of customer feedback, mostly in likelihood to recommend and speed, where we have some opportunities here in location 10. But if we had just been focused on the sales numbers, we may have never seen that manager had that opportunity to fix those areas. So in summary, as we're looking at the balanced scorecard here, key takeaways are that the balanced scorecard provides feedback on multiple performance areas, and it allows us to identify deficiencies that we may not have identified if we were only looking at a few key areas. Okay. It also can prevent employees from focusing on only a few key metrics. So in the example that we just walked through, the manager of location 10 really could have ignored that customer feedback if we were just focused on on sales and profitability data, but because they're being evaluated on the whole picture of the balanced scorecard, they can't ignore that. They can't ignore that data because it is going to be tied to their performance evaluations and ultimately to their compensation. So I hope this helped explain how to use a balanced scorecard and what it looks like. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk to you soon.